being sensitive is a gift to the world. You care deeply, you're such a good friend, you notice things, but that also means that you feel a little bit more overwhelmed. One thing we want to think about with our sensitive kids is harsh criticism is going to be really tough on them.
Welcome to Parents with Met with Jenny Hale and myself, Dayna Galloway. Today we have an episode from the Coach's Couch and are talking about sensitivity in our kids. Now there is a whole spectrum when it comes to sensitivity. Some kids feel deeply. Some kids are going through tricky times which can heighten sensitivity. There can be so many reasons, but there are also tools that can help in most cases. Today we are joined in studio by Sheridan Eketone to chat through some of these things. So welcome.
Thank you.
It's such an interesting topic, this one, when we're talking about sensitivity in children. And I think overall what this is an encouragement for today is for parents to really tune in to who they've been given in their family and to notice things about them and to find ways that work really well with the grain they've been given.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think too, I look at my two kids and I'm like, I can see that there can be a high sensitivity in some areas, and one is definitely more sensitive, I would say, than the other. So true about we can't just sort of parent the same way with both children or how many you've got.
We can't do cookie cutter parenting.
No.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
So I think a great place to start is what are some of the things you would be seeing maybe if your child is a little bit higher in the sensitivity?
Yeah. So I think it's important to start with saying that sensitivity isn't something that you get a clinical diagnosis for, but it's more about an array of traits that we see in kids and in adults. And so we want to be curious when we're seeing these things as to wondering whether there is a higher level of sensitivity. So kids that are higher in sensitivity, they get overwhelmed more easily. And a lot of that is because they notice things. So they sense and feel things really deeply. And because they're so busy spending the day noticing things that they often are quite overwhelmed by the end of the day. And so overwhelm is big with sensitive kids.
And one of the things we know about sensitive children is that it often takes them longer to recover.
Yes.
It's like they have to process the day, or parents will often say, oh, it takes me ages to get my child to sleep. And they're ruminating through the day and kind of rehearsing the day again and sometimes even sort of shocking themselves with the events of the day by remembering the day.
Yeah, lots of big feelings, lots of holding it together, maybe until they come home and have their safe place where they might hit overwhelm. So, I think what we want to think about is kids who are more sensitive probably needs longer downtime than others. They won't be up and ready to go and do lots and lots of things after school.
Yeah. And I think too, with high sensitivity, it shows up in neurodivergent kids and neurotypical kids as well.
Yes.
So it can be just across the board. I suppose too, it's that spectrum, with sensitivity, it can be very wide. You both love this topic. Were you both sensitive kids? Overly sensitive, higher sensitivity?
So, interesting story. I have 4 kids, and one of my kids, I just was struggling with a little bit. She was very explosive with her emotions, and a friend said, hey, there's this talk about sensitivity at Parenting Place. Shall we go along? So I go along to this talk, and it was actually Jenny Hale who was the speaker on the night, and I'll never forget it. There was a wee questionnaire about sensitivity, and I sat there, like many parents probably do, going, I'm not sensitive. And then I proceeded to tick just about every box. And so for me, my journey with sensitivity has been twofold. One is understanding how it showed up for me as a child, but also with my kids being able to reframe it for them as actually a real gift that they have in the world, that they feel things differently than others or more deeply, but it gives them the ability to have empathy for their friends, to notice when someone's sad, to do something about it. So I think we can really help our kids who are sensitive see it not as a bad thing, but as a bit of a gift.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you realised that you were maybe higher on the spectrum of sensitivity and one of your kids was, did that make you have more grace and see it differently? Or did it kind of, because sometimes when we see something in ourselves and the other person, it can almost intensify or make it harder. How did it work for you?
I think it just gave me an understanding, because I think without understanding what sensitivity looks like, you're often reacting in a frustration or like, why can't she just do what I've asked without melting down? So it gave me a real sense of, sometimes just that knowledge is real power of understanding it's not just her being difficult, it's that actually life can be a little bit more overwhelming. So, my kids are teenagers now, and they will say to me, hey, Mum, I'm just going to have some downtime in my room. So they'll take themselves away when they're feeling overwhelmed. And I often look at that and think, I'm so happy for them that they have this framework rather than me who had no idea this was playing a part in my life. I often think of being at a school camp and Mum had sent me away with a woolen jersey. Do you think I could wear that scratchy material on my skin? I just couldn't. And I remember just ripping it off and couldn't ever wear wool. And that's often what we see with more highly sensitive kids, is their textures are really tricky.
And it's lovely knowing that there are things about all of us that are unique and that we can recognise them and kind of celebrate them and think, yeah, I do, I might have a great memory, or I'll really sense how people are feeling in a room, or I'll notice a bad mood. And as we kind of understand ourselves more, we get to understand our child more. And I think we feel less worried when we know these are things we can learn to regulate. If we find it really hard to cope with loud noises, we might be aware that we need to move out of a loud environment, or we help our child say, yeah, I know it's noisy, eh? And we are, just learning to live and move through the world with a noticing and an understanding. And it's not like we've been given a prescription for something that's negative, just something that we're going to work with.
Yeah. What can be hard for parents having a child with higher sensitivity?
I think parents can find it hard because they can be sensitive to emotions, and that can be actually positive emotions. They might be really expressive when something's really great, but equally they can be really explosive with some of the tougher emotions. And we know that sometimes when there's sensitivity involved, that shame sits really close to vulnerability for a sensitive child. So when they perceive vulnerability, they almost get even more explosive sometimes because it's so painful. And so I think as parents, we want to come alongside and have an understanding that actually we want to be with them when they're overwhelmed and help regulate those emotions with them.
It probably, because I'm thinking of my children. I mean, we're all doing this as we're listening and I'm thinking of how things play out at home. And I think, like, one of my kids, they don't like to be corrected. And they're very confident. So you wouldn't think they were higher in sensitivity. But when it comes to, I've made a mistake or I've done something I shouldn't, I can see that really plays out. It's harder for them.
Yeah. I think one thing we want to think about with our sensitive kids is harsh criticism is going to be really tough on them. And so we want to be gentle in our correction. And I think that doesn't mean that we don't guide them or correct them when needed, but it's how we do it. I remember from your talk, Jenny, you spoke about, there's probably no one more hard on themselves than a more sensitive kid. It's almost like they've got a filing system of every wrong they've ever done. So when we jump in on the top of, how come you always, or why can't you just, they're already beating themselves up about it. So I really loved that image of, I often think of that filing cabinet with my kids and go, I don't want to add another folder here with shame about this topic. What is a hopeful way of encouraging them to make a change?
I think another thing parents find hard is that these children take longer to regulate their emotions, and sometimes in our busy lives getting out the door, they are having a really big upset over a sock or something they can't find, or just the fact that they know they're going to separate from a parent. And it seems as though we've got to have a little bit more built in terms of patience and timing and rushing. These kids don't love to be rushed. And that's hard in our busy world. So how do we help parents sort of accept that might be their daily need for a little bit of slower time?
Yeah, I think being proactive to kind of front foot that. So we know we might need to be a little bit more organised, that they will get undone if you are going to be late. One of my girls, when she started school, I remember her being mortified one day coming home and saying that she was that kid that, sat up really straight and did all the things right, because often our sensitive kids want to do the right thing. But the boy next to her had been really berated by this teacher, and my daughter was mortified. And so, often we're going to need to sit with those big feelings or give them an understanding of it's okay, you're okay, this wasn't about you, but they will feel it more deeply. So I love that, Jenny, thinking about how do we build in buffer time, build in some downtime, build in some capacity to sit with them through it.
Thinking of those younger kids, like when you get to school and you want the time to sign in and put your lunchbox and your drink bottle and hang your bag. I can imagine that would be quite anxious, for a child of all those things if the bell's about to go any second. Good things to think about.
And sometimes we can feel that, there's so many great things for our kids to be involved in, so we schedule them and we want them off screen, so maybe they've got lots of things after school. But we are learning that these children often need big patches in the day that aren't scheduled, because they are often just surviving with what's already in a school day or a kindy day. Yes. And I think just reminding parents that although there are wonderful things to do, just make sure there's buffer times in the day. Even if your child wants to go to drama class and guitar and soccer, that's lovely. Yeah. But we've sort of got to front foot the spacing of scheduling for these kids.
Yeah.
So what works well then? Some ideas for helping our kids with high sensitivity.
Yeah, so allowing that time for downtime is really big. One thing I like to talk to parents about is understanding where they have sensitivity around emotions, finding different ways of maybe drawing out their emotions. So we often talk about, Dr. Becky has a really good way of doing this for more sensitive kids, which is thumbs up, thumbs to the middle, thumbs down. So you're able to kind of gauge the emotional temperature with your sensitive kid without having to say the words. And so I started this with my daughter, who was 14 at the time. I said, was mum's dinner the best in the world, a bit meh or yuck? So you play with it a little bit around something that's not emotionally intensive, so that later on I could draw it out when she maybe has had a bit of a rough run-in with her sister. Hey, babe, are you feeling sad, a bit annoyed, or really mad? And so that can be a really good way of just helping our kids, any child actually, to be able to express their emotions without maybe saying the words.
And what about when you're going out? I know it's been said that these children do quite well if you've given them a little bit of the outline.
Yes. Yeah, a little bit of rehearsal. Today we're going to go and see Auntie Sue. And who's going to be there? There's going to be her lovely dog. And what might happen when we see the dog? The dog might bark. So you're really doing a little bit of a run through for them for what to expect, so that they're not, there's no sneak attack for them.
How do we help kids shift from I'm too sensitive rather to I experience things deeply, and just seeing the positive? Because, there's so many great things. Being a little bit more sensitive can actually open up.
Yeah. I think we want to understand it as much as we can, have some skills to work with them, but also it's how we narrate it for them. So I will often say to my girls, actually being sensitive is a gift to the world. You care deeply. You're such a good friend. You notice things. But that also means that you feel a little bit more overwhelmed, more so than another person. So let's look after you. What does that look like? What do you need? And I think when we can help reframe it for them as a gift and not a bad thing to have, it just helps them navigate their world.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear that it's not a deficit, but that they will experience and feel things differently. So we can celebrate. I love how much you think about things. I love that you care about others' feelings and notice when someone's sad. I mean, there's things we're obviously teaching them skills for so that they are ready for the world or getting readier for the world. But I think that when we kind of lift up our hands and sort of frustration or say you're just too much, that's really hard for a child who's sensitive or strong-willed. When we are sort of saying this is a bit much for me, I think parents often have to sort of come to the party with, you know what, I've got you, I've got this, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. I love that, this idea that they have, there is a deep sense of they are good and they are nurtured and they are loved. And I think with sensitive kids too, we can do a bit of nudging towards brave. So it can be really easy to avoid the things that they get a bit upset about, or, you might have the kid who's going to swimming lessons at 5 and they don't want to go through the door. So maybe, we're a little bit more gentle with them, that actually we are going to go in, but we might sit beside the pool, and we might do that for a couple of lessons before they are ready to join in. So we can accommodate, but also know that sometimes they will need a little bit of nudging, and that's okay as well.
I just had a moment flashback of you mentioned the pool, and I remember with one of my kids going to this new swimming lessons and trying it out, and they wouldn't even get anywhere near the pool, and I decided we were going to leave with a win, and we're just going to put our feet in, and we were there for about 2 hours and no feet were put in, and I was like, why did I stick to that so much? Like, why did I have to push this so much? It was just too much. And now looking at both my kids, so starting football or tennis or doing something, I will now do that very differently with both kids. One child, we will turn up and they didn't want to get out of the car to do football. So I'm like, we're on the sideline and that's okay, and we're just going to have a kick. No pressure. Next week, in their own time, out doing it. My other child, I need to actually push a little bit more and nudge a bit more and, all right, we're going to do this. Which field are you going to? I mean, what are some of the things, like maybe starting school, joining a sports team? Those things are going to be a bit trickier, aren't they?
Yeah, there's so many aspects to it. It's all the people, it's the noise, it's the emotional temperature in a new entrance class can be really overwhelming for a sensitive kid. It can be our emotions around them starting can really impact our kids as well. So the more we understand the child we're given, the more we are able to meet them where they're at. And I love, Dayna, you're knowing the difference between your two kids, and parenting is not cookie cutter. We can't do the same thing.
There's a little bit of trial and error there. I don't know.
I'd love it to be cookie cutter.
So maybe too, this might be where you come alongside your child's teacher and give them a bit of a heads up, of these are some of the things you may notice, or this is some of the needs. Yeah,
I for years, the moment you have that 15-minute meeting, I would say, hey, just so you know, my little one, she feels things really deeply, and that might look like. So you're giving them a heads up, because I think teachers have 30 kids in the room, and often they don't always have the capacity to really see what's happening. So that giving them a heads up is a good thing.
When would you say parents or caregivers may need to start looking at exploring support pathways? I mean, some of the stuff, it's really natural. It's looking at what sort of child you have. But when may they need to go, actually, this is our child's getting a bit stuck here, or we might need to talk to someone? Yeah,
I think we want to think about, there's so many things on a continuum, and yes, neurotypical kids can be sensitive and neurodiverse kids can be sensitive. And so I think with parents, I want to encourage us, where it is really impacting the day-to-day life, where those emotions are really strong and they're hard to manage, that we can be curious about, is this just a sensitivity of temperament, or is there another explanation for what might be going on for them? And I think we, like I said, Dayna, we want to understand what makes our kids tick. And the more we understand, the more we can support them in all of the beautiful ways that their brains work. And so I think where we see that intensity, where it's really impacting day-to-day life, we might want to be curious about seeing a child psychologist or going to your GP just to be a bit curious.
I feel like there's so much more we could say on this topic, but we're wrapping it up. So any final thoughts, ladies?
Well, I do have one. I think these children are incredible and marvellous, and sometimes they don't know it, and sometimes they've got this internal negative voice. So I think even writing down the things you love about these kids is a really awesome way to celebrate them.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I think I would add to that, there's been some research done around sensitive kids that grow up in supportive families. They actually build resilience. And I think that is the hopeful message that we can have, is that actually supported well, sensitive kids do really well in life. And so that is our role, is to understand the kid that we've been given, to understand what makes them tick, though manage those emotions the best that we can. Good enough is good enough, not perfect parenting, but in doing so it creates this safety for them to be who they are in the world and to have them feel secure in it.
Love it. Great thoughts. I think too, we can be curious about who we've got, but sometimes we still need a bit of help.
Absolutely.
How do we do this well? How do we support this little one that we've been given? So if you need some support, some ideas, do get in touch. parentingplace.nz. We've got some wonderful coaches. They're pretty good to hang out with, and we've got great courses that can support you.